Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are analyzing, well, frankly, one of the most unexpected organizational blueprints we've ever come across.
Yeah, it really is.
We're talking about high-stakes medicine, right?
Okay.
But we're looking at it through the lens of professional entertainment. It sounds completely different.
It does, but the source makes a compelling case. The organizational lessons, where those two worlds overlap, they're surprisingly profound.
Okay, so tell us about the source.
Yeah, so our analysis comes from Lester Fitzgerald Bussey. He's an experienced OB/GYN. We're talking 30 years in the field. And he's actually now completing his PhD.
Okay.
And his research is focused on how organizational culture impacts, patient outcomes, learner outcomes, the whole system.
But the really unique part, the reason his perspective is so different, is his background before medicine. In the late 1980s, he was a professional performer.
That's right, dancing and singing for the Anheuser-Busch Corporation.
So literally a doctor who used to be a professional dancer. That's quite a path.
It really is. And he's explicitly using that stage experience as a kind of map or maybe a lens for thinking about clinical improvement. And he kicks off his reflection with a Joni Mitchell quote, which really sets the stage, no pun intended, for the culture shock he felt moving into medicine.
But what's the quote?
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone?
Implying he lost something valuable from that performance culture when he switched.
Exactly. A highly structured culture of collective accountability specifically.
Okay, so that's the paradox we need to explore today. What can this world of elaborate, highly choreographed entertainment where the goal seems to be applause, spectacle, what can that possibly teach high-stakes medicine? Where the goals are, zero harm, total precision. Our mission, then, is to unpack what that performance culture offers medicine. Things like accountability, precision, and maybe a certain kind of vulnerability.
Precisely. Bussey argues that while the stakes are obviously different, life and death versus a good show, the organizational demands for success, they're actually strikingly similar.
They both require this intense commitment to collective effort.
That's his core argument.
So let's talk about that performance world first. When you look at the sheer commitment required, it's kind of mind-boggling.
It really is.
They had to convey, warmth and competence, hitting very specific marks, specific poses 5 times a day.
5 times a day. And performing for potentially hundreds of thousands of people every year. This wasn't like a one-off show.
No, it was industrial-level precision.
Oh, yeah.
But applied to art, to performance.
And that consistency is so crucial. The author really emphasizes that while it looks simple, maybe, smile, wave, sing a song, it was organizationally incredibly deceptive.
How so?
Well, they had to execute complex choreography, complex vocals, all together perfectly synchronized in real time, while navigating a stage full of other performers and avoiding moving parts of the set. Think about that.
Yeah, that's complex. Failure wasn't just embarrassing, it could be dangerous.
Right. Costly personally, like getting injured, and professionally, ruining the entire illusion, the spectacle for the audience.
So that level of complexity, it absolutely demands a structure that really prioritizes the mission over any individual ego.
Exactly. And this is where the organizational structure from the performing arts starts to look like a potential blueprint for other high-stakes fields.
Like medicine.
Precisely. They operated under these rigid, you could say non-negotiable accountability structures. It wasn't just about hoping everyone did their best.
It wasn't self-policing.
No, not at all. You had choreographers, music directors, providing immediate constant feedback, holding performers accountable, often publicly.
Wow.
And constantly reminding them that, look, your personal preference, it matters less than the collective precision. The show must go on perfectly.
So the ultimate goal, organizationally, was the system over the self. He gives a really specific example of this, doesn't he, with numbered roles.
He does, and it's incredibly telling. He writes, I'm boy 2 on this day, front right. I am across from boy 3. We kneel in front of boy B and boy A who have girl 2 and girl A on their shoulders.
Well, who too? Not, the lead dancer or even his own name in that context.
Exactly. Think about what that numbering does organizationally. It just strips away any cognitive load about positioning.
You're not wondering, where should I stand?
No. You are boy 2. And boy 2 has this precisely defined location, this defined task, relative to 4 or 5 other clearly defined roles.
Zero ambiguity.
Zero. It leaves no room for doubt about your place or your purpose in achieving that collective outcome.
It's definitely a mechanism for efficiency. But I have to say, it also sounds, well, maybe a bit dehumanizing if you're someone who wants to be the star.
It could feel that way, sure.
Yeah.
You're a component, not necessarily the unique talent,
Yeah.
but that organizational humility, as you might call it, is exactly what enables the precision.
Oh,
Because when everyone knows their exact role and trusts that the person next to them knows theirs just as well, the whole system functions. It achieves that near-flawless collective effort.
and that clarity, that trust in the system. That's something medicine sometimes struggles with, right? When roles get blurry or ego gets in the way.
That's exactly the connection Bussey's making.
Okay, so we've got the precision part, this incredibly tight structure. But that kind of rigidity, that constant feedback, it must create intense pressure backstage.
Oh, undoubtedly.
So how did they manage that? That pressure cooker environment, it seems like it could easily breed, friction, conflict.
It's interesting because the author argues that the intense precision was actually enabled by a surprisingly close and maybe even vulnerable backstage culture.
Really? How does that work?
The idea was to achieve that perfect synchronicity on stage, you had to basically eliminate interpersonal friction off stage.
Hmm. That sounds like a tricky balance, an organizational tightrope walk, especially given the environment he describes. He mentions the co-ed changing rooms, right? Which meant, in his words, no space for modesty.
Right. And he even brings in Maya Angelou, noting she called modesty a learned affectation with little use.
Okay. But I need to push back here a little just for clarity for the listener. How does that dissolving boundaries, this lack of modesty, how does that translate into better outcomes in a place like a hospital? Isn't there a huge risk?
That's a fair question, and it's critical. Bussey isn't suggesting, shared changing rooms in the operating room. That's not the point.
Okay.
He's focusing on the organizational principle he learned from that experience. It's about the psychological proximity, not the physical.
What was the principle then?
The rule was crystal clear. The interpersonal stuff, it didn't matter. It couldn't matter. Why? Because the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few, or the one.
The show, the mission.
Exactly. So vulnerability was allowed, sharing your gifts was encouraged, but with one huge condition: you could absolutely not intend to cause harm or disrupt that collective mission.
So the forced vulnerability, maybe, was about stripping away the things that cause professional pettiness, like ego, personal issues, grudges, so the main task could succeed without that resistance.
That's precisely it. Ego becomes a direct threat to collective precision in that model.
Okay.
And then he makes the explicit link. He argues that the complexity of pulling off that huge production, making sure every single piece worked perfectly 5 times a day, is actually comparable to the cognitive load and teamwork needed for a complex clinical task.
He says the production was.
As complex as the process of childbirth. His words.
Wow. That really grounds the comparison in his own medical expertise.
It does, and it leads to this poignant reflection he includes. There's an image, presumably of the cast taking a bow,
Uh-huh.
and he notes the standing ovation, the fireworks celebrating the perfect show,
Mm-hmm.
and realizes that was probably one of the last times he got that kind of external validation for anything he's performed since starting medical school.
Which was just weeks later.
Right. Weeks. Your reward systems just vanished.
Right. So that's a huge shift, going from that world of immediate, very visible external validation applause, fireworks, to a world where success is often quiet.
Mm-hmm. Internal.
Yeah.
Or sometimes success is just the absence of failure, the prevention of harm. Much less glamorous.
And he entered medicine so soon after leaving that performance world. He says the person didn't change that drive for precision, the collaborative instinct, but, quote, only the culture I'm in.
Yeah.
And losing that culture, that immediate accountability, that celebration, it must have been jarring.
It seems like it created a kind of vacuum. Think about it. In the performance world, if boy 2 misses his mark.
The choreographer sees it instantly.
Right. And probably the audience notices seconds later. The feedback loop is immediate, transparent. Accountability is right there.
Okay, so let's look at the direct comparison he makes. He uses this sort of organizational contrast.
Yeah, it's very clear.
So, past life, 5 performances a day, ovations. Now, daily rounds, 0 ovations.
But look deeper at the accountability structure itself. Past. The choreographer, the music director, held that immediate, transparent accountability. It was a clear chain of command, focused purely on the technical output, the performance.
Okay. And now, in medicine.
Now, accountability typically rests with, attending physicians, faculty, mentors.
And the difference isn't just who is in charge, right? It's the quality of that accountability, maybe.
I think that's part of it, is the attending's feedback always as immediate, as public, as focused purely on the technical performance of the team, like the choreographer's was.
Often. Probably not.
Yeah.
It can get filtered through hierarchy, personal dynamics, institutional processes. It's messier.
It can be. Which leads back to that vulnerability point, but framed differently from medicine.
How so?
Backstage, they needed that shared vulnerability, that lack of modesty maybe, to ensure the mission succeeded. Now, clinical teams need shared vulnerability too, but we call it psychological safety.
Right. So people feel safe speaking up about errors, near misses, potential harm.
Exactly. The mechanism shifts from maybe a forced, boundaryless vulnerability to a carefully cultivated psychological safety, but the underlying purpose is similar. Eliminate the friction, the fear, that threatens the collective task of patient safety.
And the stakes, of course, remain incredibly high. The stage production demanded intense mental and collaborative energy, just like childbirth. And now the clinical work demands that same energy constantly.
Right. And in both worlds, the core principle holds. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
The patient, the learner, they have to be served by effective teamwork. The mission comes first.
So when the literal fireworks disappear, where does the reward come from? That's what he grapples with.
And his conclusion.
He realizes he can't expect ovations anymore. The reward shifts. It becomes internal, collective. It's about achieving the perfect, safe outcome together.
The essence is still there, he says. To join voices, share gifts without harm, and give people their fireworks.
Yeah. The fireworks just become something different. They become the successful C-section, the correct diagnosis, the smoothly run code blue. The achievement itself is the reward.
Okay, so bringing this all together, the synthesis here feels incredibly powerful.
It really is.
The core organizational insight seems to be that these two seemingly opposite worlds performance art and medicine actually share a fundamental requirement.
Which is.
Shared, hyper-defined goals and collaborative, almost radical precision.
Absolutely. If you are boy 2 kneeling in front of boy B, you are basically useless to the system if you don't know your role inside and out, and if you can't absolutely trust that boy B will execute their role perfectly.
And in medicine, the stakes are just exponentially higher than missing a dance cue. The cost of ambiguity of someone not knowing their role or trusting their teammate can be patient harm, catastrophic harm. And this leads to maybe the most critical connection the source makes. It's between that rigid structure, like being boy 2, and the most basic human interaction.
How does he connect those?
Well, it seems by defining roles with such extreme clarity, you actually enforce a kind of mutual respect, because your success utterly depends on everyone else doing their hyper-defined job perfectly.
Ah, okay. You have to respect boy B, because your ability to perform your role literally depends on him being exactly where he needs to be, doing exactly what he needs to do.
Right. The accountability for the mission, for the collective outcome, it's so immense. It just pushes personal friction, ego, all that stuff out of the way. It has to.
And that leads to the source's final message, a direct, almost startlingly simple mandate for the medical field. It recognizes that the foundation for cultural change isn't always some complex new technology or protocol.
It's much simpler. What is it?
It's basic human interaction. He says, hey, medicine, begin with good morning, smile, and remember, mutual respect is non-negotiable.
Wow. Just begin with good morning. Smile. Mutual respect is non-negotiable. That's the core lesson from a 30-year OB/GYN who used to dance professionally.
That's the takeaway.
So for you listening, the ultimate lesson here seems to be this. Chasing excellence. Getting those fireworks in whatever high-stakes work you do. It's not achieved through individual stardom. It's not about celebrating how complex the work is. It's achieved through deliberate, conscious, maybe even humble collective effort, defining roles clearly, like boy 2, and making sure that the absolute bedrock of any functional team mutual respect is established every single day, starting with acknowledging each other. Good morning.
We've really traced how this disciplined, vulnerable, highly accountable culture from a performance trip, how it offers this surprising yet logical blueprint for improving how professionals work together in complex medical settings.
The stage as a laboratory for teamwork, it really makes you rethink the role or maybe the utility of individual ego when the stakes are high.
It really does. Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. If the ultimate goal in both a massive stage show and a complex clinical team is collective precision and zero harm, then how might explicitly numbering roles or defining team accountability as strictly as a choreographer does? How might that actually change the daily psychological safety, the outcomes? in your own high-stakes work.
Hmm.
Think about it. How might defining yourself organizationally as clearly as Boy 2 actually free you from some of the ego and friction and allow those necessary fireworks of collective success to happen more often?